All right, so let me introduce you to a man named Stu. So this is Stu. Stu grew up in Colorado, and he said that his family was spiritual but not religious. That is becoming a very common phrase. Have you heard this before? Spiritual but not religious. So it means I believe in God, but it really doesn't affect my life much, except once in a while I pray to God. But it really doesn't affect anything else. I still just believe in God. So it's very common. So he grew up that way until he was 14 years old. At 14 years old, his mom and dad divorced, and then he became an atheist. He was done with God. So he wasn't even spiritual anymore. He said, I was my own God. I was on the throne. It was me who I turned to, and it seemed like I was the only one that I could depend on in my life. And so from 14 on, he began to live that way. During high school, he was a dedicated athlete, so he just worked really hard, got good grades, did well in school, got to college. And it was at college that some of his buddies introduced him to alcohol. He said he remembered the very first time he got drunk. He said he ran up and down the hallway. He said, I can remember how much I loved the feeling. Where do you think that took him? Right into alcoholism. He became a very, very high-functioning alcoholic. After school, he got married, he got his MBA. He started working as a controller at casinos, which is probably not a great job if you're an alcoholic, right? So lots of late nights, lots of partying. Eventually, he went and worked at a tech company. He became the chief financial officer. He said he fit in so well with the other executives because they were all hard drinkers, heavy drinkers. And so he said they'd work all day, work late hours, then they'd go to the bars and they'd work some more, writing ideas on the back of napkins. Imagine those ideas. He said, there was no thought of God during this entire season of my life. My God was that brand new Jaguar I just bought in my driveway. Or my house on the golf course with the mahogany bar in the basement. That was my God. So that's what mattered most to me. But then he said, despite all this material and career success, he felt like his life was falling apart. He said, I was getting what I thought I wanted, and I still wasn't satisfied. And that is one of the most common American messages that I literally could share again and again and again. Any of you ever listened to the Dave Ramsey radio podcast? If you're like, he's a financial counselor, he has people call in and ask questions, and recently a 37-year-old man called in. He was a multimillionaire, and he said, I'm miserable. Well, how can that be? You're a multimillionaire at the age of 37. That's what it's about, right? Have lots and lots of money, lots and lots of career success, and you'll be full of joy and happiness, and everything will go good. And here they are, over and over again, when people achieve this, they don't feel great, and they don't feel content, and they don't feel joy. They feel miserable and discontent. And that's what happens again and again and again. So the question I want you thinking about as we get started today is, how would you answer this question? How do you answer that question? I'll be happy, I'll be content, I'll be satisfied when what? What's it going to be for you? Millions? Plenty of people have it. Not happy, not joyful, not content. Success in your career? That's what I chased. And the more successful I became, the less joy I experienced. What are you after? I'll tell you what doesn't work, and what Jesus would say emphatically doesn't work, is any purpose that you determine for yourself. Where you just pick what you're going to do and what you're going to shoot for, that'll never work. So what I want to do today to explore this subject, which is really such an important subject in our American culture, is I want to use a Christmas movie, and I do this periodically, a Christmas movie. It's not just one of my favorite Christmas movies, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. You ever see this movie? On Netflix, you got Netflix. This is I highly recommend it. It has amazing spiritual themes in it. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. So for those who don't know, I'll give you a summary as we go through it today. Jasper is the main character in the story. So Jasper's dad is very, very rich, and he's growing up with a life of privilege, and he's spoiled rotten. All he cares about is having people wait on him and take care of him. He doesn't push himself, doesn't apply himself in any way. And his dad is he's the postmaster general for the entire country. And this is before cars and planes and modern stuff. And so his dad hates the way his son is living. And so his dad decides to push him out of his comfort zone. And he makes him apply to become a postman. And Jesper thinks, if I fail at every part of this training, Dad will let me just go back home and have waiters serving all my needs every single day, and I can go back to silk sheets and nice food and everybody doing everything for me. And so that's what he sets out to do. So he fails every single test. When it comes to sorting the mail, he doesn't even try. When it comes to carrying fragile packages, he just kicks them down the stairs. When it comes to sending message by passenger pigeon, he overloads them and they fall. And so he's just going to fail everything, because he knows that his dad is now going to let him go back to that life of comfort and luxury, and that's what he thinks is going to happen. And again, the story is really about his life before and after. It is a transformation story, which I love. If you know anything about me, I love transformation stories. And so much of the story of this movie answers the question about modern life. What's going to make you happy? Where are you going to find contentment and joy and satisfaction? Because it will not be what the marketing messages of our society tell you. It won't be there. And if you chase it, you're going to find out. So we're in this series called Christmas Time, and we're going to use this movie today to talk about how to experience a really meaning-filled life. And I want to ask you to open your program, take out the notes you'll find inside. Grab a pen. There's going to be some things you can write down as we go through this today. Welcome, of course, those of you who are watching online. Glad you decided to tune in today. If you go to our website at penulchurchlife.com, you can get these notes as well. So let's jump right into this. Two things we're going to talk about. First, you have to understand that our purpose in life is found here. It's found in serving. It's found in serving. There will be no commercial on today that will show you that. Everything in our marketed world will tell you that it's about what you can get. That'll make you joyful and happy and everything else. But the reality is, it's a dead-end path. There's no joy down that path. So I told you that Jesper's goal in life is to flunk out of postmaster school so he can go back home and sleep in his silk sheets and have waiters serving his every need. And so he flunks all the tests on purpose, and to his surprise, his dad doesn't go along with his plan. His dad says, no, you pass. And not only do you pass, I'm going to send you to this far north remote place called Smearensburg. And he said, you're now a postmaster up there. And it's this island community way up in the north. And you have 1 year to get 6,000 letters passed through that post office, or I'm cutting you off completely. You'll never get another dime from me. And so Jesper tries whining. Doesn't matter. This is how it's going to be, Dad says. And so Jesper takes off, and again, before cars and trains and everything, and so he takes a cart all the way up to the edge of the island, or to where he needs to get on a boat to go out to the island. He gets to the island, and to his shock, the island is chaos. There is this long, raging civil war between two families on the island, the Crumbs and the Ellenbows. And they can't stand each other. It's like the old Hatfield-McCoy story, remember that? In American history. So they hate each other, and they generationally hate each other, and they fight all the time. They're always doing mean things to each other. They literally have a museum where they celebrate the time they've hurt the other family. So they can't stand them. They can't stand them. A modern day equivalent would be Republicans, Democrats. That's what it would be like in our society. It's like that's what we're seeing here in our society. So he walks into this, and they're in constant warfare. The kids don't go to school. Most of them don't even know how to write, so they're not going to send any letters. He goes to the post office, and it looks like this. Nobody's mailing any letters. He's got 1 year to get 6,000 letters through this, or he is cut off, and he knows it. So he talks to every person on the island, tries to get them to write a letter. Nobody cares. They're not going to write a letter. And the last person to talk to is this giant man, a woodcutter named Klaus, who lives way up in the corner of the island in isolation. It's the only person he doesn't talk to, so he travels all the way up to Klaus, to his house in the middle of the woods. And he walks in, and he discovers that this giant of a man, strangely, has all these toys, these beautiful homemade toys in his house. But he's a single guy and lives alone. Now, later in the movie, you learn the backstory. Klaus, at one time when he was young, had been married, and he and his wife had planned this large family, and so he had made all of these toys for the day when he would be a dad. And tragically, his wife died young. And he had just turned inward on his grief. He'd never done anything with the toys. They had just always sat there on the shelves, unused, unplayed with, until Jesper came. Now, when Jesper left after being in Klaus's house, he left behind a picture that this little boy in town had drawn, and it was a picture of him up in this tall part of his house behind these bars. And when Klaus saw the picture of the boy, something inside of him started to stir a little bit. By the way, this is always how change happens. Change doesn't happen when you read about something and just have intellectual facts. Change happens when it engages your heart and your emotions get involved. And he feels for this little child, and so he takes one of the toys off his shelf and he wraps it up, and he goes and finds Jesper because he doesn't know where the boy lives, but Jesper is the postman. He knows where this boy is. And so he makes Jesper deliver the toy, and when he watches that little boy open the present and then play with this toy that he's made, it was like his heart melts. And he's not going to be the same after this. Now, what Jesus would say is happening in this scene, and again, I know it's fictional, it's fun, it's creative, but what Jesus would say is happening is that in the moment, Klaus is experiencing the truth of what Jesus said is that it is more blessed to give than to receive. That's what Jesus said. There is a blessing from God that comes into your life when you are giving that you never get when you're receiving. It's really clear that you understand what Jesus said. It's not that they're close. That the blessing of receiving is just as close as the blessing of giving. It's why all of these people tell the exact same story when they achieve and achieve and achieve and achieve and achieve, and they are not full of joy and contentment and peace. Because the blessing of God is not counted by how much you accumulate or achieve in life. It comes on the other side of the scale by how much you give. Jesus would say that the real life that so many of us are looking for is going to be found only when we make a transition and stop making it about us and start making it about others in this world. Look at how clear Jesus is. Then calling the crowd to join his disciples, Jesus said, if any of you wants to be my follower, look what he says, you must, give up your own way. Would you underline those words on your notes? Give up your own way. And then you take up your cross and then follow me. But the very first thing is you got to let go of your own way. Stop trying to make it about you. Stop trying to make it about your life and what you want to achieve and all those things, because if you really want to experience God in this world, the very first thing is give up your own way. Now, just a couple of chapters later in the book of Mark, Jesus sits with his disciples and he says this, he said, whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. So look what he's saying here. He's saying, listen, if you want to know who's going to be the leader in the organization I'm going to build, then the qualification that you should look for first is how much serving is a part of their life. Do they really serve and serve constantly? Matter of fact, anything ever happens to me and you want to replace it, and you want a replacement, one of the most important qualifications according to Jesus is you should look at the person's serving life. And it should absolutely dominate their life that they are servants. He literally uses, look at that last sentence. He uses the word slave. That's what you're looking for. And he says, because this is how he uses third person language, the Son of Man. This is how I've come. So anyone who really gets me, they're just like this. It's not about them. It's about others and serving others and making yourself slave to others. Matter of fact, Paul put it this way. He said, you must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave. And look at that again. Look what I've highlighted. You must have the same attitude. So that's my question. How many of you have the same attitude as Jesus? That you are a servant in this world. and the way to achieve the life that you actually want is through servanthood, do I actually consider myself a servant? I want you to write that down. You're the only one who can answer that. I can't answer that for you. Is that your objective? Is that your goal in life? Is to become a servant? We talk about this a lot in our church because we know how important it is. And I know that there are different serving mindsets, and I need you to think about where you're at today. Again, nobody's going to judge. This is you and God alone. The truth is, some of you don't serve. You didn't think at all about serving anyone last week. You didn't serve your spouse. You didn't serve your family. You didn't serve your coworkers. It never even crossed your mind to serve. Right? Isn't that true? There are people who say that they follow Jesus. By the way, Jesus has no concept of this. There is no concept of this in the New Testament of a person who says, I follow Jesus, but I never serve, or I just don't even think about it. There's no concept of that. If that's where you're at, you really, really need to give careful thought as to whether or not Jesus is the Lord of your life. It's critical that you think about that. Because the New Testament has no concept of a Christian who will not serve. None. So some people serve when it's convenient. And this may be where you're at. I mean, you're the only one who can say this. I no idea where you're at. You decide. But this is what the New Testament talks about, serving sacrificially. I really want you to think about that. When was the last time serving was very costly to you? Financially, a significant amount of your time? When was the last time it really cost you to serve? That's what Jesus said. And then the final one is where we really change our whole identity and we just know we are a servant. Literally, in 1 Peter chapter 2, it says we should think of ourselves as slaves. That's a provocative word. This is where he says we need to go. Because this is where the meaning-filled life is. It will never be found by what you accomplish and by what you achieve and by what more you get. It's found here. And I was reminded of that years ago. Years ago, I used to work with this woman named Kim. One time, right before the holidays, Kim and I were at this meeting. We had this breakout session. We were talking. I knew Kim was a Christian, and so we just started talking. And she talked about how much she loves the Christmas season. And she started telling me why, and I was so amazed. I said, would you please write that out for me and send it to me? And so Kim and I were friends, and so she sent me the summary of what they do at Christmas time and sent me some pictures. And what if we all lived like this? And not just at Christmas. She said it all started for her in 2014. She was divorced in 2014, and suddenly she was a single mom. She had, I think he was 12 years old at the time. And she did what everybody does in America, right? You buy some presents for your son, you put them under the tree, Christmas morning comes, he opened up his presents, 2 hours later, he was like, Mom, I'm bored. Right? It's the American way. It's the American way. More kids than any child on the planet, and they're bored. So she was like, there's got to be a different way. So in 2015, she came up with an idea to change the way she was doing Christmas. And she started what she calls the 12 days of Christmas. So she sat down with her son and she said, let's figure out for 12 days leading up to Christmas, what could we do every single day to show a random act of kindness and to serve somebody in need in our community. And together they came up with this creative list. And over the years, they've done all these different things, because this is back in 2015. She said that one of the first things they did is they would go to the nursing home as part of one of those 12 days. So you know, you may not think about it, but think about it now. I'm asking you to think about it. You know that there are people in our nursing homes, in our communities, that never get visits. Right? Isn't that true? Nobody goes to see them. And they sit day after day alone. And the message that they have internalized is, I don't matter, right? The elderly in America, and the way we treat them. And so they're like, well, one of the days every year is nursing homes. And they've done all these different things. They bring treats. They play games with them. One year, they've brought every single resident a big helium-filled smiley balloon. And so She and her son did that. That's one of their days. Then one of the days, one of my favorite ones, is they go to, this is a gas station down where they live, and they buy these $20 gift cards for the gas station. As you see, it says, if you need it, keep it. If you don't, leave it. And then they tape them onto different gas pumps around the city. So imagine you pull up and you're like, oh, man, money's tight. And all of a sudden you see a gift card for that hanging on there. And so they randomly give gift cards out. Every year, this is her son, they volunteer to buy toys for Toys for Tots. But then they also go and volunteer to pack the toys. So this is one of their 12 days. Every year they volunteer not only to bring food to a food pantry, but to volunteer at the food pantry. So one of their nights is there. One of the things they've done is they've gone to the gas station and bought $1 lottery tickets, and then they'll go throughout the city into different parking lots and put lottery tickets under people's windshield wipers. They love the Humane Society. So they contact the Humane Society every year. What do you need? And they don't just buy an item for the Humane Society. They go and volunteer at the Humane Society. They do coat drives. One of their favorites she described as something they call Ding Dong Ditch. And they'll go and they'll buy these really fun care packages full of treats and sweets and games and things like that. And they'll write a little note, all anonymous, of course, and then they will go up to random people's houses, put it on their porch, ring the doorbell, and run away. And just a random act of kindness. On and on and on she went, describing what they do for the 12 days leading up. Can you imagine what it's like to grow up and that's Christmas for you? She tried to describe it, and you can imagine how hard it was. She said, to see the smiles on the faces of strangers and see their pure joy as we play out some of these crazy ways of giving back has warmed my soul for years. Now, we don't have 12 before Christmas. We got some. What if we did our own version 5 days before Christmas, or the first 12 days of January? Because you know how many depressed people there are going to be in January? Because it's January. What if we did that? Do you think you might feel some joy? You think it might be a little bit different than making it all about us? It's what Jesus said. It's the best life. The best life is there. It's on the other side of serving others. Now, here's before I go on. This is so important to God. This is so important to God. Serving, you heard Jesus' words, right? Does serving matter to Jesus? Oh my, it matters a lot. He literally says, you shouldn't even be a leader in my church unless you are a servant. Matter of fact, he uses the word slave, right? You shouldn't even be a leader unless you are this person. It matters so much to God. You know why? There's so many reasons to this. Part of why is because we live in a dark world, don't we? This world is dark. And for many of you, it's getting scary dark. And what does God want for people who say that we follow him? We bring his light into this world. 3 times in 1 Peter 2, he says, do good, do good, do good. And so that your good deeds silence people who don't believe in Jesus. Because they have no answer for the love and kindness we bring. It's so important to Jesus. And part of why it's important is because the way God created it is that kindness creates kindness. Kindness creates kindness. It's one of my favorite themes in the movie. If you watch this movie, this cartoon, you will see this happen. So the kid gets the toy, and he's so excited, he tells everybody because he saw Klaus bring it. And so he's like, oh my goodness, and he finds his letter. And so kids in the town start thinking, oh my goodness, if I send a letter to Klaus, I get a toy. And so Jasper is like, this is it. This is how I'm going to get my 6,000 letters. So he teaches all the kids how to write letters and how to put a letter in, put the paper in and put a stamp on, because then they'll get toys too. Now, obviously, he's coming at this from really selfish perspective initially. But one of the things that happens is the bully in town wants a toy, so he sends a letter. And every night, Jesper and Klaus deliver all the toys, all the kids that wrote letters. And so Jesper crawls into the house, and all of a sudden he realizes, oh my goodness, I'm in this kid's house, the bully. And he's like, I'm not giving him a toy. And he takes a piece of coal, he puts piece of coal in his stocking. So then the next day, the bully's mad, and he comes to Jesper, he's like, this letter thing doesn't work. I gave a letter, and I didn't get any toy. I got coal in my stocking. And so Jesper says, oh, well, that's because Klaus is always watching. He's always watching. He knows who's naughty and who's nice. And naughty kids get coal. They don't get toys. You want to throw that snowball now? And all of a sudden, all the kids are like, oh my goodness, I got to be good to get a toy? Well, then I'm going to be good. And all of a sudden, they start fanning out across the city, and everyone is doing good. And again, remember, these two families have been warring against each other forever. They do all these mean, awful, malicious things. So all of a sudden, they're like, oh, we got to be kind. And so in one case, these kids used to always go over to this one woman's house and steal all of her berries because she was on the other family. So instead, they go and pick all of her berries and put them on her stairs. And she opens the door and sees them running away, and they've picked all her berries. And so she makes jam for them and brings jam over to them. Well, then the wife of this other family, she's getting jam, and so she makes a pie and brings a cake back. And all of a sudden, kindness starts getting repaid throughout the city. There's this nasty, angry man who builds this big wall to keep the other family out. And one day when he's working on the wall, he falls and hurts his foot. And so the kids from the other family take him home on a sled, bandage his foot, feed him soup. And he is so impacted by their kindness that he tears the wall down and builds a giant playground for the kids. On and on and on the stories go, as kindness is returned with more kindness, and kindness is returned by more kindness, and the community starts to change because of this kindness epidemic that sweeps through. And in one of the most profound movie quotes of all time, it's still one of my all-time favorite movie quotes. Klaus says, a true selfless act always sparks another. Do you know that's true? A true selfless act always sparks another. You know, he might as well just say that he's quoting Jesus. Look at what Jesus said. Do not be overcome by evil. Do you want to know how to overcome the evil and darkness we see in this world? What did Jesus say? How do we overcome it? We overcome evil with good. This is why doing good, becoming a servant, making yourself a slave in this world, is not an optional thing for followers of Jesus. It is emphatically commanded. It's because this is how the world changes. As we adopt the mindset of Jesus, we become servants of this world and we become focused on good. I'm telling you, I've said this before, and let me say it even more directly. I don't care which political party you are a part of. Don't care. Whatever one you aren't a part of, the other one, are you doing this to them? Is this your attitude toward the other party? Because what you should be doing, if you're a follower of Jesus, is to that party that you don't like, instead of posting mean, nasty, disrespectful social media posts about how stupid they are who vote that way, how dumb they are, how evil they are, instead you should be buying donuts and bringing it to their headquarters in the town that you live. And not donuts that you've dropped in the mud. Good donuts, the good kind. Right? Isn't that Jesus' way? Isn't that the Jesus way? That's the Jesus way. We treat even to the point where, look at this. This is the Jesus way. But to you who are listening, this is Jesus. Love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. So when was the last time you ever did good to someone who hates you? Ever. You did good. That's the Jesus way, right? This is what he asks us to do. Jesus asks us to go in a completely different direction than the way we want to go. To do good. Because kindness triggers kindness. Kindness triggers kindness, and it gives us, for us as followers of Jesus, the opportunity to share why we do the kindness. It's because God showed us kindness first. One of my all-time favorite triggering kindness stories, true story. I don't know how long ago it was, but there was a waitress, 24 years old, still lived at home with mom and dad, and she worked the night shift at a restaurant in New Jersey. So she had worked from 8 o'clock at night till 4 the next morning. She was just about done with her shift when a couple of firefighters in her community walked in. Now, she'd heard the fire sirens. She knew there was a fire. They were fighting a fire. These guys walked in. One of them looked at her and said, "Get me the biggest cup of coffee you've got," because they'd been at it all night. So they sat down, and it was breakfast, so she served them breakfast, and then when it came time to pay their bill, she paid it. This 24-year-old kid, living at home with mom and dad, no money. But that's a picture of her. Here's what she wrote. "Your breakfast is on me today. Thank you for all that you do, for serving others, and for running into places everyone else runs away from. No matter your role, you are courageous, brave, and strong. Thank you for being bold and bad word every day, fueled by fire, driven by courage. What an example you are. Go get some rest. Liz." And what did that cost? Breakfast at a family restaurant, $35, $40. She didn't have to tip herself, so, not much. And this was just an act of kindness. That's all she was doing. She wasn't doing it she had no idea what was about to happen next. But those firefighters were so grateful for this kindness in that moment that they took a picture of it and posted it on social media, and it went viral. And then they were like, "We want to do something for this girl." And she had no idea all of this was happening behind the scenes. And then one of the firefighters discovered that Liz was trying to raise money to buy a handicap-accessible van for her dad. See, her dad had a stroke. Or he had a brain aneurysm and then 2 strokes. So he was permanently paralyzed. And he lived at home. That's why, by the way, she works nights, so that she can be with him during the day. I don't know where she sleeps, but that's the kind of young woman she is. And so she had a GoFundMe page out, and she was just trying to raise $25,000 for her dad to buy a handicap-accessible van for her dad. Well, the firefighters saw this, and they're like, "We're going to get her that money." And so they posted it everywhere. And again, she doesn't know what's happening, but all of a sudden, that amount starts to grow, and before you know it, because she paid the meal, they bought a van. But that's not where the story ends. It's cool enough, right? Ellen DeGeneres heard about it, brought him on the show. And one of our sponsors gave them a check for $20,000. And by the time the GoFundMe stopped clicking, they'd raised over $86,000 for her and her dad. And they bought a brand new handicap accessible van because she paid their breakfast bill. So the moral of the story, go do kindness and someone will buy you a van and give you $86,000, right? No, you know what it's like because you've all had it. You've served somebody and they didn't even say thank you. And you've served somebody that didn't express any appreciation at all. And how does a follower of Jesus respond to that? That's not why we did it. We don't focus on outcomes, right? Outcomes belong to Him. Our job is obedience. Our job is to be obedient servants in this world who are taking their attention off of themselves and just focusing on the needs of the people around us. The needs of the people who are in your own home first, right? Then at work, and in your community, and in our world. Because we know that what Jesus said is this: you want to overcome evil in this world? Overcome it with good. Because a truly selfless act always sparks another. So a couple of things as we finish up. What's your mindset about serving? Some of you you haven't chased it enough. You really do think there's some level of income, there's some level of personal success, some level of, I got to get married, I have kids, I got to get to this point, and then all of a sudden I'll be content and I'll be happy and I'll be full of joy. You haven't chased far enough to know it's a dead end. It's not that there's anything wrong with any of those things, but we don't live for them. And we don't make them the focus of our life. We know that we are to be like Jesus in this world, which means servants in this world. Do you understand that a meaningful life is the one found on the other side of serving and giving, not receiving? Is that just clear to you? Some of you, it's clear. You know it. This church has some amazing servants in it. They know it. Is it your goal to become a better servant? I want to have you think about this. I know we have less than 12 days. I've already said that, but we have some time. What if that's where we started? I mean, it doesn't have to be hard. Some of you are like, well, Brian, money's tight right now, and I can't buy gift cards. I can't do it. Okay. Can you write nice cards or notes to people that you appreciate and admire? You can do that, I bet. What if you just made it your goal for the next 12 days to write one personal note of thank you and appreciation to one person in your life that you really appreciate? I promise that would have a huge impact. And here's the goal. For us to make ourselves available to God, to be his hands and feet in this world, and say, God, who do you want us to do good to today? Because that's what he wants us to bring. His goodness into this world. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. We do what Jesus did. That's what it means to be a follower of Jesus, is to do what Jesus did. Jesus came into this world to willingly lay down his life on a cross for all of humanity, knowing that a whole bunch of humanity would hear about it and wouldn't care at all. They wouldn't care, and it didn't matter. He gave his life for us anyway. And his kindness, when we understand what his kindness did on the cross, and we receive that kindness into our own lives individually, it changes us. The Bible says that he gave his life for us because there is no way for you and I to be okay with a pure and holy God in heaven. No chance. We have to pay. But Jesus paid our debt on that cross. And then he rose again. And he has proven by his life that he can forgive and restore and change any human being on earth. And if you're ready for a new life with God through his son Jesus, you can have it right now. You can say something like this in your heart to him. You can say, Jesus, I want to be new with you. I want you to forgive me. And I want your grace in my life. I want to know what it's like to really live with personal interactions with you, not information. Please forgive me. Come make your home inside of me today. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this service today. We hope as a church and pray that this was something that really helps connect you deeper to Jesus. That's what we're all about as a church. If you need to communicate with us, if you go online to penuelchurchlife.com, in the upper right-hand corner is a box that says, I said yes to Jesus. It also says, please pray for me. Just click on that, and it'll take you to a place where you can communicate with us as a church. So if you ever want any of the resources we mentioned in a service, go there and let us know. We'll gladly send them to you. Or if you made a decision to say yes to Jesus or you have a prayer request, just let us know. And we're always glad to hear from the people who are watching online. And if we can continue to help you grow in your faith in any way, then we want to do that. So again, thank you. And our prayer is that you continue to grow and connect and find the true life that Jesus Christ is offering.